Howdy, friends. I want to talk to you guys a little bit more about this conflict between Hamas and Israel. There are 5 different dilemmas that I think it's really important to be aware of when you are trying to understand the complexity of this conflict, because to not understand these dilemmas oftentimes means that we inadvertently participate in the endangering of Israeli lives and also Palestinians in Gaza. The first dilemma is what I'm just going to call the death count dilemma, and that is that the media is going to want to constantly be keeping score between how many Palestinians are dying and how many Israelis were killed by Hamas. This is a very morally dubious way of describing this conflict. This is almost like if you had a death cult in your community and the media was insisting that the same number of police officers are killed for every time a member of this death cult is killed. Now, that obviously is not saying that the Palestinian civilians who are going to die are even a part of this, but Hamas started this, and I'm going to talk about in a minute. They don't care about the loss of civilian life. In fact, the more Palestinians who are killed by the Israelis, this is a part of the objective of Hamas. And so it's really important not to look at that death count and to suggest a moral equivalency between what is happening on both sides. All right, number 2, you're going to see the media begin to call for what they're going to call a proportional response. And this is another very dubious idea. If you're Israel, what kind of response are you going to want from your government? You're going to want a strategic response, one that's going to actually put a stop to the problem. In 2021, just a couple of years ago, the Biden administration insisted that Israel stop their degrading of Hamas because they said it was not a proportional response. That's how we got here. Every time you call for a proportional response instead of a strategic response, you simply set the stage for the next tragedy. So whatever Israel does here, it's going to have to completely degrade Hamas's ability to ever do this again. And when they do that, it will not be proportional. That call for proportional response does not make any sense in a situation like this. They need a strategic response that will actually put an end to this being a possibility in the future. Okay, the third dilemma I'm just going to call the land dilemma, and that is you're going to start to hear people in the media talk about the root cause of this is the conflict between the Palestinians and Israelis, the historic conflict and desire that some Palestinians have for a state. Now, it's important that you guys understand Hamas does not want the Palestinians to ever have a state. They want the destruction of the state of Israel. They only want a Palestinian state if there is no Israeli state left. And so there is nothing that Israel could ever do from a concession perspective to appease Hamas. Hamas is a lot like ISIS, and they have an ideological reason for why they want the destruction of the Jewish state. And so any discussion or suggestion that this was created because of the lack of that peace process is just completely out of context. That's not what Hamas is looking for. It's not a part of their charter. They want the destruction of the Jewish state. All right, the fourth dilemma is the diplomatic dilemma. Israel has a terrible diplomatic dilemma on their hands right now. That is that Hamas, this is going to create such a win for Hamas diplomatically. And that is because there's a basic 5-step process that Hamas has done. Now 5 times is the 5th time that they're attempting this. They're not trying to get land. Obviously, they don't have the military capability to take in and keep land. This is not about them trying to win land. This is about them trying to score points in the media. So Hamas attacks, Israel responds. There are civilian deaths. Those civilian deaths get Israel condemned by the international community, and then Israel is isolated. That is the strategy here. And so every single time you participate in condemning Israel, you are making it more likely that Hamas will use the strategy over and over and over again because it's working. All right, guys, and the 5th dilemma that Israel faces here is a sanctity of life dilemma. So part of the problem is that Hamas and Israel do not have equivalent ways of thinking about the sanctity of life. Hamas, for example, has sacrificed hundreds of children in trying to dig tunnels. They have no problem using human shields. They're very similar to ISIS in this way. But they will try to make appeals as if they care about the sanctity of human life at the same level. But Israel, this is why Israel will give usually over 100 to 1 in prisoner swaps. Israel cares a lot about life, and Israel as a military has done more to try to stop the possible collateral damage from civilian death than any other modern military has ever done. But that is not going to be the story you're ever going to hear in the media. So how do you fight an enemy who doesn't care about life? this is an enormous dilemma that Israel's going to face in the coming weeks and months. So what can we do about this? Well, please, the number one thing I would say that you need to be aware of, at least in this process, is these 5 dilemmas that Hamas is successfully putting Israel in, and do not give in to the propaganda that is going to use these dilemmas against Israel. Because again, when you do that, this makes it more likely that it'll happen again and again and again. If this strategy continues to work, if this continues to create condemnation against Israel, then what's going to stop Hamas from using this over and over again? And the people who suffer the most from this are the Palestinians. And so if you care about Palestinian life, if you care about Israeli citizens, if you care about life in general, then you're going to be praying and hoping for the Israelis to find a strategic solution to stop this from ever happening in the future again. That's the best possible scenario in a situation like this. Otherwise, this repeating cycle is going to happen. So don't give in to that cycle, and please be praying for the peace of Israel.